Welcome back. In our last journey, we saw the tragic end to King Saul's obedience. A kingdom once given was now torn away, and the prophet Samuel mourned for the king he had anointed. But God's plan does not wait for man's grief. A new king was to be chosen. The Lord's voice came to Samuel, telling him to stop mourning for Saul. "Fill your horn with oil," God said, "and go to Bethlehem. I have chosen a king from among the sons of a man named Jesse." Samuel was afraid. If Saul heard of this, he would surely be killed. But God gave him a pretense. "Take a heifer and say you have come to make a sacrifice." And so the old prophet traveled to Bethlehem. The town elders trembled, but Samuel assured them he came in peace. He called Jesse and his sons to the sacrifice. When Jesse's eldest son Eliab stood before him, tall and handsome, Samuel thought, "Surely this is the one." But the Lord spoke to his heart, "Do not look at his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him." The Lord does not see as man sees. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. One by one, 7 of Jesse's sons passed before Samuel, and for each one the message was the same: "The Lord has not chosen this one." Confused, Samuel asked Jesse, "Are these all of your sons?" Jesse replied, "There is still the youngest. He is out tending the sheep." Samuel insisted, "Send for him. We will not sit down to eat until he arrives." And so they brought him in. He was a young man with a healthy glow, handsome and with beautiful eyes. And the Lord said, "Arise, anoint him, for this is he." Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed the shepherd boy David in the midst of his brothers. From that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. But as the Spirit came to David, it departed from Saul. The king became tormented by an evil spirit, seized by fits of rage and paranoia. His servants, seeing his distress, suggested finding a skilled musician to soothe him. One servant knew just the man, a son of Jesse, cunning with the harp, a mighty man of valor, and one with whom the Lord was present. Thus David, the anointed but unrecognized king, was brought into the court of the rejected king. Whenever the evil spirit tormented Saul, David would play his harp, and Saul would find relief. The king grew to love the young man and made him his armor-bearer. Soon the nation's great enemy, the Philistines, gathered for war. The two armies faced each other across the valley of Elah. From the Philistine camp came a champion, a giant of a man named Goliath, over 9 feet tall, clad in bronze armor. For 40 days he mocked Israel, challenging them to send out a man to fight him, with the fate of their nations hanging on the outcome. King Saul and all of Israel were dismayed and terrified. David, sent by his father to bring supplies to his brothers on the front lines, arrived at the camp just as Goliath issued his daily challenge. He heard the insults and saw the fear of the Israelite soldiers. "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine," David asked, "that he should defy the armies of the living God?" His words, full of faith and fire, reached King Saul. When brought before the king, David declared, "Let no one's heart fail. Your servant will go and fight this Philistine." Saul protested. David was just a youth, while Goliath was a warrior from his youth. But David recounted how he had killed both a lion and a bear to protect his father's sheep. "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear," he said, "will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." Saul relented, dressing David in his own armor. But it was too heavy, too unfamiliar. David took it off. Instead, he went to the brook and chose 5 smooth stones, placing them in his shepherd's bag. With only his staff and his sling in his hand, he went to face the giant. Goliath looked at the young boy and cursed him. "Am I a dog, that you come to me with sticks?" he roared. "Come here, and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals." David's reply thundered across the valley. "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel." As Goliath moved in for the kill, David ran to meet him. He reached into his bag, took out a stone, and slung it with all his might. The stone struck the giant on the forehead, sinking deep into it, and Goliath fell face down on the ground. David ran, stood over him, and using the giant's own sword, he killed him and cut off his head. When the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled in terror. David's victory made him a national hero, but his fame lit a fire of jealousy in Saul's heart. As they returned from battle, women came out from the cities, singing, "Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s." The song enraged the king. From that day on, he looked on David with suspicion. Saul's son Jonathan, however, loved David as he loved himself, and the two made a deep covenant of friendship. But not even Jonathan's love could quell his father's rage. Twice, as David played the harp, Saul hurled a spear, trying to pin him to the wall. Twice David escaped. Saul grew afraid of David, because he saw that the Lord was with him. The king's plots grew more cunning. He offered David his daughter in marriage, hoping the Philistines would kill him as he tried to earn the bride price. But David survived, and his reputation only grew. The more wisely David behaved, the more Saul feared him, until the king became David's constant enemy. Jonathan warned David of his father's intent to kill him. After a tearful farewell, David became a fugitive. He fled to the priest Ahimelech in the city of Nob, taking consecrated bread and Goliath's sword to aid his escape. But a servant of Saul, Doeg the Edomite, saw it all. David fled to enemy territory, even feigning madness to survive. From there, he escaped to the cave of Adullam, where he was joined by all who were in distress, in debt, or discontented. This ragtag group of 400 men became his army. Hearing of David's escape, Saul's paranoia boiled over. He learned from Doeg that the priests of Nob had helped David, and in a horrific act of rage, Saul ordered their execution. When his own men refused, Doeg carried out the slaughter, destroying the entire city of priests. Only one, Abiathar, escaped to tell David, who took the guilt of the massacre upon himself. David, now a hunted man leading an army of outcasts, was pursued relentlessly by Saul. Twice, God delivered Saul into David's hands. Once, in a dark cave, David crept up on the unsuspecting king. His men urged him, "This is the day the Lord has told you about." But David refused to harm the Lord's anointed, secretly cutting off a corner of Saul's robe as proof of his mercy. Another time, David snuck into Saul's camp at night and found the king and all his army in a deep sleep. Again, he spared Saul, taking only his spear and water jug. Both times, David confronted Saul from a distance, proving his innocence. And both times, Saul wept, confessed his sin, and blessed David before returning home, only to resume the hunt later. During his wanderings, the prophet Samuel died, and all Israel mourned him. David, needing supplies, sent to a rich but foolish man named Nabal, who insulted David's men and sent them away empty-handed. Enraged, David set out to destroy Nabal's entire household, but Nabal's wise wife Abigail intervened. She met David with provisions and a humble appeal, urging him not to take vengeance into his own hands. David was stopped by her wisdom and blessed her. When Nabal heard what his wife had done, his heart failed him, and 10 days later he was dead. David then took the wise Abigail as his wife. Finally, despairing of his life, David made a drastic decision. He fled with his 600 men into the land of the Philistines, seeking refuge with King Achish of Gath. Saul, hearing David had fled Israel, finally gave up the chase. But now the Philistines gathered all their forces to fight Israel, and King Achish expected David to fight alongside him against his own people. At this same time, Saul saw the massive Philistine army and was filled with terror. He sought guidance from God, but there was no answer. In his desperation, he committed a final terrible sin. Disguising himself, he sought out a medium, a witch at Endor, and asked her to summon the spirit of Samuel. The spirit of the prophet rose and delivered Saul's doom. "Why do you ask me now that the Lord has departed from you and become your enemy?" Samuel's ghost said. "The Lord has torn the kingdom from your hand and given it to David. Tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. The Lord will deliver the army of Israel into the hands of the Philistines." Saul collapsed, his strength gone. The end had come. On the field of battle, the Philistine commanders, distrusting David, had him sent away. It was a divine deliverance for David, who returned to his town of Ziklag only to find it burned and all their families captured by Amalekite raiders. His own men spoke of stoning him. But David found strength in the Lord, pursued the raiders, and recovered everyone and everything. Meanwhile, on Mount Gilboa, the battle raged. The men of Israel fled. Saul's sons, including his valiant son Jonathan, were struck down and killed. Saul himself was critically wounded by archers. Pleading with his armor-bearer to kill him lest he be captured and tortured, the man refused. So Saul took his own sword and fell upon it. His reign, which began with such promise, ended in darkness and despair on a bloody mountainside. A great and tragic chapter in Israel's history was closed. The throne was now truly empty, waiting for the shepherd king God had chosen so long ago.